Hey, what's good, everybody? It's nice to see my guest here today, Crispin, Ramo, and Claude. Thank you for anyone that's tuning in here, as in tomorrow, because we're recording on Sunday night. And this is going to be a pre recorded. So, tonight we are just going to talk about some topics in regards to like what issues really like divide the Native community, and just think of solutions, ways that we can amend, these problems. And I think we have found some good solutions that we can discuss amongst ourselves here. And I look forward to talking more about it, guys. So again, welcome, and let's get going. So um, the first topic of discussion was just like bringing Northern natives together. I know Crispin, maybe you wanted to talk about more about this and like how that might be harder than it we originally thought it would. I mean, do you feel that like it's easier to bring like Southern natives together through like the various social media outlets that we see today? Um, it's easier than it would be for Northern natives. Yeah, because I know you talked about it earlier.
Yeah, it's that and a mixture of people just not seeing the bigger picture. And when it comes to like lower 48 tribes or Canadian tribes, only for the most part, and I'm just going off my own experience, but when it comes to even tribes that are, for lack of a better word, likely to even entertain the concept of unity with Southerners, it's usually East Coast natives. And I think it's because we do have that in common with Latin American natives or Southern natives, in that we both been invaded since roughly the 1500s, the first waves of colonization, respectively. I mean, Claude is a descendant of the Taino, so that's, you want to talk about ground zero, that's the original ground zero for colonization. But the problem is there's just not as many of us. So, and then a lot of tribes are still dealing with the whole, my tribe against this tribe or what have you. I mean, even I'll give you an example in a modern context. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but the Navajo and the Hopi have taken each other to court a few times over some land claims. So you see stuff like that where it's fought in court, or you see stuff where, there's just bad blood from ancient tribal rivalries. I feel like most Six Nations I've talked to, both in my own state and abroad, with the exception of my own family, of course, my family being colonized. But um, the thing about it is, we want to have more of a unity-minded thing, because that's what the Ayanera goal is, the Great Law of Peace, the basis for the Rhododendron Confederacy. So I think with Southern natives, especially tribes that were, or people and nations that were tending to be more empires, it might be easier to get them to go along than with some tribes that maybe don't have a good history with us or with another tribe. So I guess what I'm saying is we're past the point of beefing over tribal rivalries, I think. And I feel like with a lot of US and Canadian tribes, I don't see that same page. So it is definitely harder. But I mean, the five civilized tribes, I'd noticed them too. They do make an effort from what I've seen. Not all of them, because Oklahoma's a pretty colonized place, but what isn't? So yeah.
That's true. And I think in my case and in many others, their cases as well. I think the Lakotas have been pretty welcoming, or the ones that I've met. Like uh, Alexander Wounded Side and Lakota guy and a couple others I can't remember the names of. But they've been welcomed us with open arms. I mean, like Southern natives, and like wanting to see us as their own as in like a native people. Despite like the differences where we come from, um, despite us growing up maybe originally with like a different culture and different mindset. I mean, and then up to this day, obviously things have changed, and it's good to see that acceptance. But I will say it is somewhat sad um, when you go against, like we call gatekeepers and whatnot, um,
Yeah.
and just people that don't generally, disagree or agree. But I'm always like welcome to hear their points as to why. But they're usually points that I can take apart pretty easily in some ways. In terms of like when, for example, there's this one person that I had met, and she had told me that these um, natives from tribes, I believe, said that they didn't see her as native because she was had European or like was mixed or something. I was like, that's this like the dumbest thing I've ever heard, you know? Um, because how many like northern natives do we know that aren't like 100% like native ancestry? There's a lot. So I don't know how you could say that. I think you're just kind of showing your prejudice at that point. Um, so yeah, that's one. Or another one is, you didn't grow up in the community, right? You didn't live the life of someone that grew up in a tribe or whatnot. So, Crispin, I'm sure me and Juan had asked you earlier, like what your thoughts were on when someone says that. Um, what did you say, like what your response would be, or how you could like maybe change this person's mind because they're stuck on like, we're not stuck, but very fixated on, you know, to people like us and like other like Southern natives that because we didn't grow up in a community amongst other uh, people, we aren't seen as native, no matter how much like native ancestry we might have. That's a crazy thing. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into it yet. I'll let you talk, Crispin, if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I think it's stupid because for one thing, a lot of these people that gatekeep are the same type of people that will like those that specifically will be like, oh yeah, natives mixed with white or whatever are not real natives or whatever. Um, they'll be the same people making babies that with a white dude or a white woman or whatever, and it's like, what do you think your baby's going to turn out like? So I don't know. It's like if you hate the fact that there are people that are mixed with, then stop mixing. It's really that simple. I mean,
Yeah, here's my thing is that like this is no hate to like people and tribes that don't look native whatsoever. But it just boggles my mind, man, how like some people will say that like they'll look at this person who looks like 100% like European um, as like native before they look at someone who isn't a part of a tribe that looks 100% like native. It's crazy to me. Like I don't know like how you can think. I mean that way again. Like I understand like the importance of culture and whatnot, but um, I have some disagreements. But again, as I said, it's no hate towards anyone, just my own little view. What about you guys, Ramo, Claude? Have you guys like went against anyone, or maybe just not even like native people that disagree with you from communities, just like other people that have like opposed like what you've said, or not too much?
I'll let Claude go first. I want to say something really good after him.
Sure.
So, in my personal experience, I've never really had any natives that I've met try to, deter me for what I'm doing as far as reconnecting with my roots. But I am aware of gatekeepers, and I mean, like every now and then I'll see like YouTube comments, but like I don't entertain that because to me it's not worth it. So, as far as like natives that I've come across in person, because I've met a couple of northern natives in person, and they're always welcoming. Like just recently at my job, I met a woman who's actually Ramapola Nape. She's actually native to the place I grew up. You know what I'm saying? And she recognizes me as a fellow native. And so for me, it's like, if anything, what I come across more is like my own people, Southern natives, trying to say that we are not native because they're so ignorant to the culture. I dealt with that one time recently where somebody said, we're not Native American, maybe Native Hispanic, and I'm like, but what the fuck does that even mean?
Native
It's not
Hispanic.
like, well, no, we're not from Spain, brother. Like, we might have a little bit of Spanish blood in us because of the colonization, but we're native to, even
Yeah.
if it's South America and it's
Hmm.
not North America, it's still like the Americas, the the Western Hemisphere, it's not, we're not European like the way you think, So
Yeah.
I feel like I deal with more of that. As at least my personal experience in person, I deal with more of the rejection from our own people rather than Northern natives.
True that. I mean, that's good that you've had a lot of
Yeah.
people that are welcoming and accepting too. Remember,
Yeah,
Ron, were
absolutely.
you gonna add something? Yeah.
Yeah, jumping into what Claude said, we get more criticism from our people. So yeah, I have to agree with that too. It was a while back. I got into a debate with this kid. He was half Taino and half Lakota, and we got into this whole argument. Well, the age-old argument that being native is about culture, it's not about genetic or race. And I asked him, well, put it this way: let's say you have somebody from your tribe who doesn't practice the culture. 100%. Yeah, so basically, me and this guy, we got into this age-old debate of who's more native. Is it like, does culture take precedence or genetics takes more precedence? So, for example, this Lakota and half Taino guy, I asked him, hey, so who would you consider more native? The 1% person who practices the culture more, or the 100% native who doesn't practice the culture at all? And right off the bat, he told me, oh no, I consider the 1% native more native than the 100%. So there's this big notion that it's not just him, but a bunch of people out there. They take the culture as having more importance than genetics. On who's
Yeah.
native? Yeah,
You can't ignore it's silly to me. Like, you can't ignore genetics and like the DNA that that we have. I mean,
Can I
it's
chime in real quick on that?
sure.
So the way I see it is like, how are you gonna say that a white person who practices African culture is more white than a black person, or more black than a black person? I
yeah,
mean,
right.
you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Good point.
Like, I'm sorry, like you could be 1% native and you could speak fucking Arawak better than me. I only know like 2 words, but guess who
Right.
actually dealt with the cons, quote unquote, of being a native? Guess who actually dealt with racism, discrimination, prejudice, hate attacks, even? So who's more native when it comes to that?
Right.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna, if
Yeah.
you want to identify as a Taino and you speak the language and you grow up with the culture, I will never take that away from you. But if you're and I will even consider you a fellow native, but you can't try to say that I'm not just because I grew up more New York City culture than I did Taino culture. Like, I had no control of that. My people were detribalized as a means of survival. How's it?
Yeah.
But I still got
Yeah.
I still got brown skin. I still got the black hair. So I dealt
Yeah.
with
And
stuff
basically,
that you would
by
never
this
deal
guy's
with.
logic, yeah, and basically what this guy's logic is saying is that pretty much the European or African diaspora are not white or black because they're not practicing their culture from the old continent. So basically, white or black people are not even black or white in this continent. Then it doesn't make any sense.
Then what are they? The fuck does that
Yeah,
even do?
exactly. That's what I'm trying to find out from this guy's logic.
Or people say that like you didn't suffer the same way like those from communities suffered, so I
Yeah.
shouldn't say that you're native. And like,
So what? Ancestral pain isn't a thing? Did my people not
yeah,
get colonized? Did my people not get raped? Did my people not get enslaved? Did my people, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
we were detribalized for a reason. I mean,
Or we've all experienced racism.
just because I,
Same.
as a physical human being, didn't experience it, if you actually are one who believes in the culture, then you know that we carry the pain of our ancestors for over 500 years. So how are you going to say that just because I, Claudio Polanco, have never dealt with it, that I don't feel the pain of my ancestors coursing through my veins? You're going against our own culture by saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yet people who are culturally native are more native.
yeah. Like I said, it just boggles my mind how people can ignore something so obvious. Um, you look like you're going to say something, Crispin.
Yeah, even with that, they talk about, people will say that it's about kinship ties, not race or yada yada yada. Granted, 500 years ago, no one was identifying as any kind of race. And of course, I know that the liberals and the left are going to say, "Oh, that's proof that it's a social construct." It's like, no, it's not. There's DNA tests now that prove that there's at least 5 races that we know of. But it's like if you talk about the person that's 1% practicing the culture, show me where all these people are that are supposedly 1% that speak the language fluently and practice the spirituality, because I've seen evidence that with mixing there comes assimilation. I mean, the two go hand in hand. So where is this 1%er traditional? And beyond that, when you talk about it in the Six Nations context, you think about the next 7 generations and 7 generations before you. So how can you think about the next 7 generations? They might be your descendants, but if they're no longer Unwe, they're no longer indigenous, then you're not dealing with indigenous descendants. Therefore, they're not the caretakers of the land anymore. So even if you're going not off a DNA test, but you're going off culture, you would still find that 1%er lacking ties to 7 generations. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to say.
One thing aside from that is that, like, in terms of like when you're referring to like northern tribes not like agreeing with certain things and like trying to think of like unity and whatnot, I still thought like at some point I tried to think of like a word that would best like describe everyone, as in like natives from like north to south. I know obviously you have the Native American term, you have indigenous, um, but something I don't know that even would be a native word. Like I know there's Anishinaabe, um, but it seemed that like at that point in time when I was having this conversation, there would be like certain tribes in the United States or Canada that would disagree. Um, but I find that having such a word would be helpful in some ways. Um, it's just like how you could get everyone on board. You know what I mean? If you get like what I'm like talking about, but yeah. Um, so yeah, I think there was another part on the script we wanted to discuss, and I guess Crispin, you were talking about people that like bash like Cherokees. So maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, if you would.
Yeah, people use the whole Cherokees, one being kind of, for lack of a better word, the whitewashed sellout tribe, as just the talking point for what, they want to say, oh, this person's a pretending. Guess what tribe they claim? Cherokee. And yeah, there's a lot of them that do. There's a ridiculous amount of celebrities that clearly have no native ancestry, distant or recent, and they're claiming that they do. But the thing about it is that's not unique to the Cherokee. And then you got the people that'll talk about how the Cherokees owned slaves, black slaves. What they leave out is that the Cherokee Nation was divided over that issue. And like they like to say, oh, the Cherokee fought with the South. Not all of them did. Quite a few of them fought on the northern side. Quite a few fought on the southern side. I personally don't think we should have taken any side in that war. It was a white man's war. But at the same time, I'm not going to knock the Cherokees for fighting on the side against the government that had technically removed them from their territory, because they can talk about, oh, yeah, they were removed from Georgia on the Trail of Tears, and they were. But at the time, there was no North versus South split, so that was still the federal Union government that did that. So Georgia was not, you know what I mean? They hadn't yet seceded from the Union. They wouldn't for another 30 or so years. And the thing about it is, I don't know about with the Cherokee specifically, but with the Choctaw and Chickasaw, they did pay reparations to descendants of the slaves that were owned by them. So that's where Black Wall Street actually came from. They don't ever talk about that. They try to make it seem like a bunch of ex-slaves walked off the plantation with a bunch of money, but that's not really what happened. They got it from the Choctaw and Chickasaw. It's not the Choctaw and Chickasaw's fault that later the Greenwood massacre in Tulsa happened. So Yeah, I mean, I just feel like people. I'll give you an example. I saw this woman online. She was from the Mandan tribe. That's a Midwestern tribe that was actually known for scouting themselves. Presumably, a lot of them did go against the Lakota, from what I remember. They were enemies of the Lakota. And you always hear people shitting on the Crow tribe for doing that, but you don't hear as many people bashing the Mandan or the Arakara or tribes like that that sided with the white man. So I saw this woman who was basically talking about anti-blackness in Indian country, and she was basically saying the Cherokees owe reparations. And I was thinking, do you not know where the reparations things come from? Because that was originally from William Sherman, who burned Atlanta to the ground. And it was only applying to these specific soldiers that were involved in Sherman's march to the sea. So, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit.
You're good.
I'm running around to a point
You're
here,
good.
but if they don't if they want to back the Cherokees for some of them having sided with the white man in war, well, then you got to do the same thing with every other tribe that's done that, including this Mandan woman. I said, because at least the Cherokees gave some of them freedom when they had owned them or even citizenship. Now, obviously, some were disenrolled due to a lack of sufficient ancestral DNA. But the thing about that is why is somebody that's not even from the Cherokee Nation or the five civilized tribes even speaking on it, especially with regards to a tribe that you helped the Europeans? Your tribe was actually on the same side as the Buffalo Soldiers who committed genocide against Western tribes. So if the Cherokees have to pay the freedmen, then so do the Buffalo Soldiers' descendants have to pay all the Western tribes they fucked over. Not to mention, shouldn't those tribes that helped the Buffalo Soldiers and the white man have to pay reparations to those Western tribes, like the Apache and the Lakota and the Comanche, etc.? That's my take on that. Because not all Cherokees have been sellouts. That's
Hey, thanks for clearing that up, Crispin. Yeah, you're right. No, what's interesting though is like I didn't realize that the Cherokees had that many people. It's pretty big. Yeah. I wanted to bring up one point really quick, and it just kind of popped in my head. And we were talking about like those certain natives that do look like 100%. They have, I don't know, let's say like most of their ancestors like European. How many like pretendians, Crispin, would you say that are like roaming in tribes, but in reality they're stealing like resources, or they're not like being truthful to who they are? And I mean like they're not native whatsoever, but people are too afraid to like say something. For example, like the Kerry case, right? Where people were like, what's the woman's name? The woman from Canada. Her name was Carrie. Let me pull her name up really quick here. She ended up having like Eastern European DNA. She wasn't native at all. Her name was Carrie Borosa.
Doesn't ring a bell, but I could say to that though, if I couldn't give you an exact figure on how many pretendians there are,
sure,
per tribe, but I would say there's probably millions. I mean, there's millions of natives out there. I don't want to say that pretendians outnumber us, because you have to remember there's hundreds of millions of natives in Latin America, but which you already know that. But the thing is, I still think it would probably be at least in the low millions as far as how many will say that, because just think about it. I mean, think how fashionable it is to claim Cherokee. You're starting to see other tribes get pretendians too, like Mohawk, Lakota. I don't know how much Apaches deal with that, although I've been told Lipan Apaches have been a bit of a problem with that. But I mean, I've even heard of Southern natives starting to have false claimers too. So I don't know. I mean, it's something none of us can get away with.
Taino is a big one. You got a lot of white Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and Dominicans claiming to be Taino, and they look whiter than cream cheese.
Do you think it's the other way too? Like, do you think that there's Africans that are like 100% or just like fully on like genetic Africans that are like saying that they're Taino as well,
Oh,
like white
absolutely,
and you're
absolutely.
African?
But
Yeah,
it's not when
I
it comes to the Taínos specifically. It's not as rampant, and because like at least with most of the black Taínos that I've met, they're actually Taino. You could tell. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, because I have met a couple who are like dominantly black, like, but you can still see the features in them that they're Taino. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure that there are like 100% Africans who claim Taino. I've just never met them, but I've met tons of like white Billy Bryan looking motherfuckers who happen to be Puerto Rican, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm Taino." Like, yeah, I'm sure you are with those green fucking eyes.
My problem, I think, that maybe came as a source of contention amongst like what divides like Native people is how do you solve this problem without like I don't know, and but some people might look at it as like being cautious, yeah, and not wanting to get too much in the weeds of you know if someone that appears as like not native looking like at all whatsoever, like for example the woman that was from Canada, right? Maybe she should have faced not faced but like been asked to take a DNA test like much sooner, you know, like if people are doing suspicious things or if you have enough people that are suspicious of a certain person um,
Yeah.
that doesn't look native but is also like you have enough people that are on board that believe that what she's doing. For example, Carrie Barroso was wasn't she? I think the leader of the public health department for Indigenous people, right? But she, you know, doesn't really look native whatsoever at all. Um, Perhaps she should, in some ways, be questioned, or others that are doing like some sort of like suspicious act. I don't know. It's just a way to like get rid of the problem of resources being taken, you know? Because like you said, like not just claiming Cherokee, like claiming just claiming native is in now apparently. Like
Bro,
what
I
Claude
can't tell
said.
you how many times I fucking like, because going back to visit North Carolina, meeting, meeting some older white people that I grew up with and telling them about how I'm reconnected with my roots. And they're like, "Oh, I'm native too." Like, it's like, gee, let me guess. Cherokee,
Cherokee
Choctaw.
princess.
Yeah, Cherokee. Yeah, Choctaw. Gee, I
Yeah.
wonder how I guessed that.
Great grandma. Yeah, great grandmother was
Yeah,
a
let me
Cherokee
guess. An Indian
princess.
Yeah, how'd you
Yeah,
know?
you only got a Duck Dynasty beard, and you look like you're in the Hell's Angels. But yeah, you look Cherokee.
No, but what's really funny is when people will be like, "Oh yeah, I was born on a fucking reservation and shit," and it's like, "Oh yeah, which tribe, Choctaw?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, but I thought you were born like over here in North Carolina. What the fuck? How the fuck were you born on a Choctaw reservation, but you were born in Raleigh? How does that make sense?"
I hope some Choctaws are watching this.
I hope so too.
Can't say no any Choctaws.
I do.
Right.
I mean, the woman that I consider my sister, I'll tell you, Claude knows who she is, but
Yeah.
she's got Choctaw blood. But they're getting hit with a lot of those pretendian types too.
Hmm. Excuse me.
White
You know, Crispin, in regards to where you are at on the West Coast, it was interesting when I watched a documentary one time on, and this is on Native um, topics. I think it was about like a school, like a what was it, like a safe school, like a kind of like a detention school, just for kids that were on had serious academic like issues, or had like behavioral issues, right? And it was a school's job. What are they called again? I can't think of the name.
Redirectional school, is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah. Vocational schools, things like that. And their job is just get those kids to like get back on the right track and graduate and hopefully do something, with their lives. So that's like going into the workforce or hopefully being able to go to college. And this was a school in the inner part of Washington. And I was surprised to see like how many like native people were in, or just like native looking people were in this school. So I didn't realize how many native people lived in the inner part of Washington, like on the east, East side.
Eastern Washington.
Yeah, Eastern Washington.
Yeah, go figure. The place that actually has more is more right leaning. That's and I've told Ramo and Claude about this, but from the movie Blood In Blood Out, I met Miklo from Blood In Blood Out. I don't know if Marcus has seen that movie, but I don't think you have. But yeah, it's mostly native out there. It's like well over 60% in Yakima County, and that's just 3 hours east of here. So yeah, I wouldn't doubt that there's all kinds of southern and northern communities that put the western side of the state to shame. So
Yeah, and you said they're mostly like conservative people.
yeah,
Interesting.
or
Yeah.
at least they're because the blue side is western Washington and the eastern side of the state is more red. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm somewhat. Well, actually, I'm not too familiar with Washington, but I'm aware of like the red blue parts, and it seems that like Seattle's always pretty blue.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, going on the next part here of the script, we want to talk about like relationships and like dating, right? So I guess I'm always curious on like communities and tribes, like what people's thoughts are on like dating like outside of tribes and whatnot, especially if you're like a small community, right? So people like dating out a lot to like people that aren't like native or whatsoever. Like, what are their thoughts on that? Like, what are like adults, like parents, like thoughts on that? Like, of course, like if you love someone, then it is what it is. Um, but from a few natives that I've talked to, um, the ones that are in the northern tribes or the northern natives, one of the reasons why they are so welcoming to us, southern natives, reconnecting just tribalized natives, why they're so accepting, um, is because they want to like help with like the native population, right? And obviously, if you look at like South and Central America, Mexico, there's like millions of natives there, regardless of if you're like 150 percent or whatever it might be. So I guess my question is like, do from your experience, like, do communities like advocate for just like dating, in your in their own tribe, or they're okay with like those dating outside, or like is that ever like a fear? Because I don't want to sound like a full on like eugenics person, but fear of like people like diluting their native like DNA, and because
Yeah.
let's be honest here, like it's natural for parents to want to want to see a replica of what their kid would look like, right? And they want to see the kid look like in some ways them. Like, not that I'm saying like, again, as I said, if you want to date someone that's not native, white, black, Asian, it is whatever, right? But parents, I think it's just kind of how would I say, it's kind of in your blood, or just you're just genetically disposed to like want to like see like a mini version of um, your your son, like not your son, but like your son or your son's kid. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? Like,
Yeah.
so like, is there ever like a solution um, to that? Like, if people are afraid that like, oh, what if in the next 100 years we won't have like native people that look like us whatsoever in our community? If anyone wants to talk about that, or
You know what I
Crispin,
think?
yeah,
And I've had this conversation with Crispin. I know he disagrees with me, but I stand by this. I think that at some point in time, the human race is going to be a universal race that can shapeshift its skin color based on the climate region that they're in, similar to how an iguana can change its color to blend in with its you know to in order as a means of hiding from its predators. I feel like, you know basic human biology, the reason why we evolved into five different races is because we populated all these different parts of the world over millions of years, and through evolution we adapted to those climates. So I think that, based on some research that I've done about human evolution, I think that at some point every single human being is gonna be pretty much the same. Like if like basically like if you're in America, your skin will turn brown, but then if you go to Africa, your skin will turn black. If you go to Europe, your skin will turn white. Depending on the region that you're in and what the climate is like, your skin will adapt to it. And that is a theory that I personally believe.
I'd like to chime in on what he just said about the whole race thing. Yeah, there will be a point where the entire human species will be identical, but at some point also, if you're going to go further into the future, we're going to be separated once again. Because think about it, we were like the human species, we were all identical at some point, and then we
Mhm.
start scattering through all the continents throughout the world. We started taking different shapes because of evolution. If we do so again, we're going to look identical once more, but then again, it's going to be a cycle of us going through this phase where we're going to start looking differently. And if we want to take into account, like, let's say we colonize Mars in a few centuries from now, people from Mars are going to start looking different from humans over here. They're going to be much taller. They're definitely going to be much more paler because it's a cold environment over there. It's cold weather, and Mars doesn't get as much sunlight as Earth. So people are gonna, regardless of race, like if you get a bunch of black dudes or a bunch of black people to Mars, let's say in a couple thousand years, they're gonna look way different than Africans you see in yeah, in sub-Saharan Africa or in yeah.
Right. But see, the way I see it is that even when we get to that point, because obviously I'm not saying you're wrong, but the way I see it
Yeah.
is like I think what's more important than like trying to only date natives is rather
Mm,
let's preserve the culture, because I think that's the more detrimental part that the colonizers did to us. I think that what's more detrimental about me being mixed with Spanish is the fact that my name is Spanish. You know what I mean?
mm,
And the fact that I know nothing of my native culture. And even the little bits that I did grow up with, I attributed to Spain. I think that's what's detrimental. So I think what's more
yeah.
important is that we reclaim the culture. And I mentioned before we started recording that the way I see it is like, obviously, I'm not saying, I'm not going to go at it with the Hispanista mentality, which is go for a white person in order to cleanse the bloodline. But I look at it as racist if you, as a human being, meet another human being and you fall in love with that person, but you decide you don't want to be with that person simply because they are not the same race as you. My personal belief, the way I was raised, is that that's
Yeah.
racist. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I love
Yeah.
you. You're beautiful. You're the one for me. But I can't be with you because you're black. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's
Right. Tupac did that actually with Madonna. He did that.
did he really?
Yeah, yeah, he did. Like when him and Madonna were dating, he did something like that. He told her, oh, I can't be dating you anymore because like something about how black women or the black community would not take him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that happened with I think who was it? The one that died, Kobe, right? He was dating Kobe Bryant. His wife is
Oh
Mexican.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Mexican American.
Yeah,
yeah,
Mexican American, and his family, I
yeah,
guess, didn't want to talk to him. But they eventually ended up loving the kids, and then I
yeah,
think things changed. But
I mean,
yeah.
I feel like that's an issue that's definitely faced in a lot of communities. I mean, a lot of different racial communities. I mean, I think that every racial group has racists within it, and I think that just to look down on some, because I think to look down on your child because they come home with somebody that's not of the same race, that's racist. Any way you want to slice it.
yeah,
And it's also
Yeah.
racist. It's to be like, oh, but only go for this particular race. You know what I mean? Like I feel like because like I said, if you believe the theory that I believe in that one day we'll all just be one unified race, and then maybe another separate thing will separate us later on down the line, but what I think is more important is to preserve the culture. Because I mean, if we're all gonna end up being the same race, because I mean, I really don't think that there's a 100% pure any race anymore. I think everybody's mixed with
Right.
something. So it's like I already it's like going back to what we were talking about before about like all these natives who are so heavily mixed. It's like I don't think I've ever met a full blooded anything, a full blooded white, black, native, Asian, Mediterranean. Everybody that I meet is mixed. So I mean.
I definitely have met purebloods before. I mean,
Yeah. And I think I wanted to add on, unless you're going to say something, Crispin, what Claude
well,
said. Sure.
to the whole everybody being mixed thing, I kind of almost wish I had my Brazilian friends on here with me for this, but it's okay. I mean, they'll probably be watching. But people always say like, yeah, one day we're all going to be mixed and we're going to look the same. But Brazil is already more mixed than the United States is, and I would honestly say they're our South American equivalent anyway, because they're the most populated country on that continent, just like the U.S. is up here. We've got a very small, actually indigenous to the U.S. population, just like most of Brazil's indigenous population is gone. So now most, kind of like you have the term mestizo for most of Latin America, in that country you have the term pardo, which is a generally it's like a triracial Brazilian identity. So it's like saying mestizo, but in a Brazilian way. And a lot of those people have very mixed looking features, but you can't tell me there's not racism there. So I just look at it like, I don't know. There's always going to be mixed people, of course, but I don't think we're all going to be mixed. And I think even if we were, you'd still have tall people, you'd still have short people, you'd still have people with different facial features that would be enough to that someone would justify hating on them. So, I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily. And as far as what Claude was saying, he was saying that it's racist if he was to be based on how he was raised. I personally am okay with that. If someone, you know, considers me a racist because I want to only be with my own, or I mean, I exclude most northern women too, so I mean, they could just as easily accuse me of being racist towards myself, but that's also based on bad experiences. And I mean, a lot of people feel like you're not supposed to generalize, but I've seen northern women and southern women that didn't want to date their own men, so I don't feel like it's. Do you notice how it's only racist when it's you saying you want to keep it within your race and your culture, but it's never interracial couples that are accused of racism towards their own. And I have seen people like that who are like, I don't like my own men, I don't like my own women. And as a mixed blood myself, who's had to deal with an identity crisis growing up, I just feel like they're subjecting more people to more pain, because it doesn't matter what year it is, there's still going to be walking two roads, you're going to have a problem. Having mixed features, you're going to have a problem.
See, but as to what you're saying, I feel like like the whole idea of I don't want to date my own people, that also is racist. And that's also something that I wasn't taught to do growing up. Like, my whole point is like, you shouldn't want to not date somebody just because they're a certain race. Like, if you fall in love with them, like, it's one thing if, like, when your case, because I know your story from what you've told me. I respect your decisions, just doesn't mean that I have to live up to that. Because the way I see it is, if let's say tomorrow I meet this white woman and she turns out to be my fucking soulmate, the one who like I know is like the one for me, right? But then I decide, oh, I don't want to be with you because other people are gonna think I'm this, and I don't want you because you're not my own person. Like, to me, that's just like, that's not how I look at things. The way I see it is, we're humans. We all come from Earth. We all come from this planet. So if we start splitting hairs like this, we're never gonna reach a common ground as a species.
Well, I know you're going to say something, Ramo. Sorry. Chris.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know Ramo was going to say something. He had his finger up.
No,
So.
no. I just think all of it's too literal. Yeah, but going back to the whole race thing. All right, so it's about this definition. Then Tupac was a racist. Then I don't think it's much of a racist thing of saying that. I think it's more of a being a little bit more conscious of your appearance, like conscious of a public appearance. Because in this Tupac, he wasn't trying to turn down Madonna, or because he's a racist. Oh yeah, you know what? I hate white folk and Madonna. I can't be with you, Madonna, because I'm in love with black women. No, the man was in love with Madonna, but he had he had an image to uphold in his community. So it doesn't always have to be a racist reason to leave your non-partner. It could also be an image you try to uphold in your community.
Right.
So at the end of that,
I wanted
to.
to. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to ask Jill, listen, like understand the last words he said, how he was going out.
I got most of it.
Yeah,
Okay,
me too.
cool.
I was going to say something to that though too.
Yeah.
So on the whole thing about it being racist, if I say like I don't want to date a white woman or a black woman or et cetera, right? My thinking on that is, well, wait a minute, wouldn't that be almost equivalent to saying that I'm a homophobic if I don't want to sleep with another man? Like for me,
no, this is the difference. Let me stop you right there, because I'm not you with you specifically. I know that you avoid people of other races because of your personal experiences, and that's something that I understand and respect. But I'm saying, like, let's say hypothetically tomorrow you meet a white woman that you actually fall in love with, which I don't see that happening. But let's just say hypothetically, for the sake of this argument, that you do, right? It would be racist if you decided, you know what? No, you're not native. I don't want to be with you. But you know that this woman is pro-native. She's an ally, and she's somebody that you love genuinely, and you don't want to be with her just because of that one thing. To me, yes, that's racist. And so, like I said, I know you would never be in that situation, but me, I have been into. I've dated. I want to say 3 or 4 women in my life, and only one of them has been native. To be fair, she's also the only one I ever felt like I loved, but still, like, I've been with other women because before I ever even really reconnected with my roots, I didn't really see people as all these different races. I just, until I actually really started experiencing racism, I just saw everyone as humans. And even right now, I still kind of see that as that, like, look, if I can fucking come inside of you and 9 months later a baby will come out, then to me, there's nothing wrong with that. And so, as for what you were saying about being homophobic, no, that's different because you're talking about what you're attracted to. Like, I don't think it's racist if you say you don't want to date black women because you're not attracted to black women, right? That's fair. I'm not attracted to black women, but I don't think that makes me racist. It just means I'm not attracted to women with African features. Don't mean I think they're ugly. It's just not my preference. So that's how I look at it.
Here's my kind of take on it. You know, I think it's good. I mean, it's good that like Native people want to like date others. Obviously, not just on other. I mean, as in others, I mean like other like Native people. Obviously, not just on physical characteristics, but just like culture too. Like, oh, like you're of Perpetua descent and you're of like Ojibwe descent. That's awesome. You know, let's connect and let's talk. You know, and things like that. And we even talked about like a dating app, a native dating app, which would be cool. And you also have to look at it as like, I don't understand why people will like say, oh, why are you praising your native features only, or not only, but just like you shouldn't praise like your native appearance because it's culture and whatnot. But I don't see a problem with that because haven't we been like hunted down to extinction? Well, what tribes have through the government. Not just that, you have a culture south of the border, the Latin media, I should say, media south of the border that is always like for like, appearing like white and always looking down on native skin and whatnot, native features. So I'm 100% like for like, natives wanting to like explore and like connect to like other native people. That all being said, like, you're going to have people that are either, married to someone that's not native or have kids with someone that's not native. I don't think it's like, just again, my opinion, I don't think it's a good idea from other people, not you, Crispin, just like others to like want to like push them aside because those are people that could like really help this movement, like this, what's going on right now. They could be really beneficial and want to like and mean well. And obviously, they're native too, or No, never mind, not that part. But yeah, or if they're Native and they just happen to have like kids or are married to someone that's not, that's okay because I think they can be heard too. They should be heard. Perhaps they can think of like other better ideas in ways for us to like get ahead and like come together. You know, because I know people like that. Um, so yeah, those are just my thoughts.
See,
I
and that's the way.
appreciate you guys sharing your.
Sorry, what are you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say thank you guys for like sharing your opinions and
Oh,
whatnot. It was cool. And I'm sure the people that will be listening will really love to hear it too. But yeah, Claude, continue.
but yeah, I was gonna say because what you just said, it got me thinking about what you had just said about what Ramo had just said about Tupac, and I think that if Tupac had stayed with Madonna, sure he would have faced backlash from the black community, but if I were Tupac, I would have, and I genuinely loved Madonna, I would not have given two fucks what they thought, because the way I see it is he actually did shit for the black community more so than any of these fucking black celebrities today, like Jay-Z or Beyonce, who are fucking praised by the black community. But what the fuck do they do for the black community? They over here coming out in European garments and shit and filming their videos in Europe, and it's like black power, black excellence. Meanwhile, you're giving all your money to white people and you do nothing for it. What has Jay-Z done for Brooklyn? What has Beyonce done for her hometown? You know what I mean? So it's like, but we praise them because they're black excellence, black. But Tupac was actually putting together like community picnics and things like that and charity events and doing free concerts where all the money went to the ghettos. And so who cares if he was with a white woman? Because he was doing mad shit for the black community. And the way I see it is that if Madonna wanted to be with somebody like Tupac, that's actually a really good look, because now it's like you can get this big fat. In fact, thinking about it, Tupac missed out on a big opportunity right there, because you could have gotten this big white woman who's praised to this day by the globe and gotten her to start doing shit for the black community with you. And do you know how much more attention you got? Like, I always think like, my celebrity crush right now is Billie Eilish, and I think to myself, like, if I became
I wondered if he was gonna bring that up.
dated, do you know how crazy of a fucking fan base she has right now? So imagine if I became a celebrity and dated her, and I was able to get her to start using her platform to push Native issues. Please tell me where how that is a problem,
dude.
Why that's a bad thing.
It's social pressure, not the social pressure that Tupac was facing, but his family members and his crew, like his personal friends, his personal circle. They were facing social pressure from the black community because regardless if Tupac meant well, and these are the things that unfortunately happened. If he would have gone through with it, the black community would have forgotten about him. He wouldn't have been praised to this day. He would not have been worshipped the way he is worshipped today. So he could have lost all that. So it's like it's basically a gamble that you're facing. If you get what I'm saying.
I think had he not died and had he gone through with it, I think he would have been able to navigate it, because Tupac was powerful. And I mean, sure, it may have been difficult for him. I won't deny that, but I don't think that it would have been completely the end of him. I think that he would have been able to, like, if he did what I had said, like getting Madonna in on all those movements that he was doing, I think that no, because if she would have used her platform to push issues that Tupac was feeding to her.
Yeah.
Do you know what that would have done for the black? Because you know that these fucking white government officials don't start paying attention until white people start speaking up. You know what I mean? So wouldn't it actually be great if that's a means of gaining white allies to speak for our issues?
So I have something to say about that specifically. And one of the points I actually touched up with Ramo on the other day, and I wondered if you'd be willing to say, what you said to me in inbox the other day about female nature. I mean, maybe not, but if you want to, but at least what you were saying about love, but because Claude was talking about love, and I was thinking that's something that can fade over time. So there might be someone who is your love, but it's like, is there such a thing as a true love? And to the Tupac thing, this is just the one thing I'll say about this. I don't know anything about the Madonna relationship, but I know that he was with Quincy Jones's daughter, who was half white. And originally he was hating on her because she was half white. He was saying something along you already know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I didn't know that. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
She
Nah, I
stood
know.
up for her dad or something, and then he ended up with her. So
He said some disrespectful ass shit before he even got with her. I'm surprised that she forgave him because he said something
Heck
like
yeah.
all Quincy Jones does is fuck white bitches and make fucked up mixed babies or some shit like that.
yeah, and you know what's funny?
And then somehow he ended up with one of those fucked up mixed babies, and that's why I believe that had he stayed with Madonna, he would have been able to not because it was fucking Tupac. He had a way of just navigating and getting through shit. I mean, had he not died, I think he would be super powerful right now, and I honestly think that's why they killed him.
I think the Crispin blood shit would have scared Madonna away.
Say that again.
I think the Crispin blood shit with Suge Knight would have scared Madonna away. Personally,
Well,
I know white women; they don't
was
have
he
that
with
much heart.
Madonna before or after he went to jail?
Oh yeah. I'm just saying,
He
like,
was with her before he went to jail. And I mean, all that shit happened when Suge Knight bailed him out of jail. I think that if maybe I'm sure that maybe Madonna could have bailed him out of jail if they were together, and then he wouldn't have went down that blood route. The only reason he did that was because of Suge Knight. I mean, if you actually look at the story, Suge Knight was a fucking dangerous motherfucker, and I'm not saying that as like a praising him. Like he was like people were legitimately scared of him. Like he killed people. He's in jail right now for murder. So I mean, that's
he murdered his own friend when he was trying to run somebody else over.
That should say everything you need to know about that motherfucker. I'm sure Tupac was scared of him. I mean, a lot of motherfuckers. So I'm sure he was like, all right, Suge, you want me to be blood? I'll be blood. You want me to say West Side? I'll say West Side. Even though I'm from New York, I'll be West Side. Like, I feel like they didn't show it like that in the movie, but I feel like that's what I always picture because it's like, I feel like Tupac was from the hood, but he wasn't a thug. He wasn't a gangster like that. He was a poet. He was a fucking Shakespearean loving fucking ballet tutu wearing dancer. Like, no disrespect to him, obviously, but it's like he wasn't no fucking street gangster like that. So I'm sure that when in the presence of Suge, he was scared shitless.
Yeah, because Suge was about that life. He really was. Tupac, he was just an entertainer, but Suge, he was really about it.
Yeah.
But Ramo, did that thing that I mentioned to you? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So basically, me and Crispin, we had a conversation a couple of days ago about comparing the way women love versus men. So the way women love is way different than the way men love. Men love differently than women. So women can love you, and I'm not trying to generalize because I know a lot of people take everything so literally nowadays. So I'm just saying for the most part, like 90% of women, they only love you up until the point when you stop providing or when you stop having value in their eyes. But men, they love women all based on feelings. Women can love you only up until the point that you stop providing or where you lose your value as a man. Like, for example, a woman can love her children and her family unconditionally, but not you. Rarely will a woman love you unconditionally. That happens so rare. It's nearly impossible. Like, maybe a couple of lucky guys will get that in their lifetime. Whereas, compared to the majority of men, we could love a woman unconditionally. We could go that route if we choose to, which is why I always tell a bunch of dudes, hey, listen, if you're going to fall in love with somebody, fall in love responsibly, meaning that, yeah, go ahead and fall in love with a woman, but always be ready to leave her if she acts out of line. Like, let's say she cheats on you or she's not treating you with respect, always be ready to leave her. So that was the topic me and him we were talking about in regards to the way women love versus the way men love.
Right. So I was bringing that up because with Claude, you were talking about a woman could be the love of my life, but like for me, even saying the words "I love you" doesn't even really mean shit if they don't have the action to back it up. You've already seen my rants about it, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I don't want people your age and younger to go in thinking like love is the end all be all because it's got to stand the test of time first.
So you know what? I'm actually glad you guys brought this up because I'm actually very well aware of what you just said, Ramo, and that's why I'm very selective about my partners. I used to be like very like a hopeless romantic, right? But then I got to a point where like when I saw my parents divorce, it made me realize like, yeah, you're right, But the reason my parents divorced wasn't for the reason why you said it wasn't because my dad couldn't provide, because he still provides. You know what I mean? It didn't work out. But it led me to realize like love, it made me confused about what love really was. And it took me a while. And but I realize like right now I'm in a position where I can't provide shit for you. Maybe I could provide you some weed. You know what I mean? Maybe
Hey, that's not nothing, brother.
I could provide you with weed and good dick. That's what I could provide you with. And so if I can find a girl that's enough, that's what I'm looking for right now. And because you're right, you need to meet a girl. That's why right now, when men like me who are, we want to do big things in our life and be super successful, but right now we're not yet, right? Not yet. Now is the time that we gotta find. Because I look at somebody like Kendrick Lamar, for example, and the woman that he's with, she's been with him since he was a bum. You know what I mean? And so that's how you know she loved him for real.
Yeah.
Because she was with him when he didn't have mad money, when he didn't have cars, when he didn't have hit records. He was just regular Kendrick Duckworth from Compton. He wasn't a fucking superstar yet. He was a nobody. And he could have failed. His rap career could have never took off, but she would have stuck it out with him. So that's the type of
Right.
woman that we as men need to find. So I completely agree with you, Ramo. I'm not even disagreeing with you, but that's why I say, like, if that woman that I meet happens to be non-native, I don't want to pass that up for that exact reason, actually, because what if I meet a native woman later who is like what you just said, she leaves me because I no longer can provide or whatever, and I'm over here like, damn, I passed up that white girl from back then who loved me for who I was and not for what I had. And now she found somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want something like that to happen to me.
Yeah.
I get that.
Love sure has changed a lot from like
love is fucking
my parents' days, like 1950s to like now, like 2022. Like you got like social media coming in, you got like people will try to hit you up in the DMs, or just like, I don't know, man. Like it's crazy sometimes how things have changed.
Like
it's hard to maintain.
Brother XXX said, "Rest in peace. Fuck love."
Yeah,
That's it.
In my view, it's
at least in America, right? Yeah.
In the U.S., like it's hard to maintain a good like marriage, I would say, or even just a relationship with just the current times that we're living in, especially here in the U.S., where you have such an external like problem with like what you see on TV, who talks with you on like Facebook, Instagram, all the apps, people that try to like send those like little flirtatious like messages, and you do your best to like try to be good, but sometimes people like fall under pressure, and then it gets really ugly, so it's definitely changed a lot from like those times. So holding on to a good like marriage and relationship, if you can, is just more important, I think, than back then. Not more important, but maybe more important, because there's so many obstacles now. There's so many problems, but of course it takes the willpower of a man or a woman to be strong and move forward, and not fall into this pit of no return, should I say. Y'all know what I mean. So I want to apologize. Who was the other person that you guys were talking about? Not Tupac, but the other guy. I must have been lost. Was he a rapper or someone? What was his name?
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick, is that who you talking about? Kendrick Lamar?
No, not Kendrick Lamar. Somebody else.
Quincy Jones.
Suge Knight.
Suge Knight. Yeah. Suge Knight. I don't know who Suge Knight is. That's really sad.
Suge Knight was the record producer, the executive CEO, or I'm fucking high. He was the CEO of Death Row Records, which was the record label that Tupac was signed to when he got out of jail. And he was basically a blood member, and he started out as the bodyguard for NWA. And that's kind of how when Dr. Dre left NWA, him and Suge Knight started Death Row together. And so he signed pretty much all the biggest West Coast acts. We're talking Dr. Dre, we're talking Snoop, we're talking Tupac, we're talking Dub C, not Dub C, we're
Nate
talking
Dogg.
Dog Pound, Corrupt, Nate Dogg. Like, there was a lot. They were really hitting it hard in the 90s.
Okay.
And Suge Knight also really was one of the ones who really fueled the East Coast West Coast beef.
Yeah.
He was most famous for giving a speech at an award show where he was indirectly throwing shots at Puff Daddy by saying, any artist that want to be an artist and don't want to worry about the executive producer, all up in the videos, all up on the records, dancing, come to death row. And that was a shot at Diddy because he used to always be on Biggie's songs in the background, like, yeah, bad boy.
You
Which I
gotta
think
admit it's a good
he wrote
shot,
a
though.
lot of
It's
good
a good
Biggie songs
shot.
with that shit. So
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Shug. Like, yo, he ruined a lot of classic. I always say, I hope they re-release all those Biggie songs without Puffy in the back because he ruined so many songs.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll feel a bit more about this guy.
Yeah,
I feel lost.
yeah, he was a motherfucker. Yeah, he was a true gangster. All these rappers talking about being gangsters. No, he was a real gangster.
As far as like the whole love thing, for me, I've decided to exclusively date Southern Indigenous women myself because I felt like even with Northern women, there's almost an unreliability in being a warrior because I feel like most of them, if they're not dating a non-native now, they have in the past. And I'm not saying Southern sisters don't do that too, because it's like if you live in America, a little bit of everybody's getting with a little bit of everybody, but you have the right to decide what kind of woman you do or do not want to be with. Same with them. They have the right to say what kind of man they don't want to be with. Ramo and I talk about this a lot, you know. Um,
Yeah.
I think part of it too is a lot of northern tribes will not survive if we don't start embracing southern. Like we already got southern men and northern women dating a little bit, but we need to see more northern men approaching southern women. And really, it's pretty easy. I mean, I think all you really got to do, the only two significant changes you're going to have to do is learn a bit of Spanish and eat some slightly hotter food than you're accustomed to. Which, if you're a real man, you shouldn't give a fuck about that anyway. But I mean, Spanish isn't that hard to learn. I'm learning it little by little. So,
Oh no, we lost Ramo.
He'll come
yeah,
back.
didn't he say he had to go after a little bit?
Oh, did he say that?
I think he would tell us. So he might have had a technical issue. So I'm sure he'll be back in.
But like for me, that I think a lot of northern dudes are scared to just even approach, and it's really quite that simple. I think.
Well,
Like
I'll
I've
tell you
gotten some
what-
smiles.
Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I've gotten smiles just knowing the names of certain Mexican states. That's pretty easy to impress. I don't know.
I was gonna say what I was gonna say is that I definitely think that as a northern native, it is very important that you learn Spanish because I can tell you as a southern native that it don't matter if she's white, black, or native. If she is southern, if she's Hispanic, she
Right.
will chastise you for not speaking Spanish, and she will curse you out in Spanish. And especially
You want to know what she's saying.
and especially like if you're native, like they kind of like automatically expect you to know how to speak Spanish, especially if they're ignorant and don't really realize that northern natives aren't Hispanic. They see the features and recognize you as their people and they assume, you know what I mean? So definitely if you're gonna, as a northern native, if you're gonna go after southern women, you definitely need to learn some Spanish, like almost fluently. Because from my experience, it's like it's hard for me to date southern women because I don't speak Spanish well enough. So, and I'm a southern native, so
That could have something to do with what part of this country you're in too.
oh,
I
that's
mean, I
everywhere
don't
I've
know.
been. In fact,
Oh,
it's
really?
worse in the South. In the South, like they don't fuck with you at all if you don't speak Spanish. Up here in New Jersey, at least they get along with me, but it is sometimes hard to flirt with women because they want you to flirt in Spanish.
Have you ever been out west before?
Nah. Furthest I went is Utah, and I really didn't interact with the people there.
There's a lot of people out here that have been assimilated for generations that don't speak that much Spanish. One of the brothers I was gonna have on, or I talked to Marcus a little bit about this, maybe another time. But he's Apache and Cora, and that's a Mexican tribe that makes houses out of palm trees, I believe. But yeah, they what was I saying? Like, yeah. He speaks, I want to say Spanglish maybe. So it's like it's a little bit more normal in some parts of the country to not know it all. Like in Northern Cali, a lot of people don't speak Spanish at all, and they'll be Chicano.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, maybe I guess the culture out there is different, maybe, but I know that where I live, like, especially when you're trying to get at like Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, like they really expect you to know how to speak Spanish.
I,
They get you'll see Southern Native women out here go with white men, white non-Hispanic men, because they can speak fluent Spanish. I have seen it
yeah,
happen. I have seen it happen. I've seen them get married and have kids with them. They are white,
Yeah,
non-Hispanic, Germanic, fucking Irish motherfuckers, but they speak fluent Spanish. They went to school for it or whatever, and it impresses them. So
yeah.
yeah, Spanish is very powerful. It's a romance language. So I mean, that should say it all right there. That's why they love it.
Yeah, plus there's a sense of superiority in knowing that I can learn their language with that while knowing that they've never conquered Ganyan Quehaga people. The Spanish have never done that. So it's like I can learn your bitch ass language, but you can't learn mine because you don't. You know what I mean?
Now,
I don't think the average Criollo is going to be, or Criollo, however you say it, is going to be able to fucking
yeah.
learn Ganyan Quehaga.
Oh no, hell no, hell no. Those same white people, they forget about it. Because when you hear them speak Spanish, it's like they'll speak it fluently, but they still can't roll their R's. They still can't fucking. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I can't roll my
This,
R's.
yeah, yeah. Guys, like this is something I
Easy,
want to
man.
point out. Like,
You gotta look. You gotta curl your tongue like
Yeah.
that, and then just breathe.
yeah,
You
Okay,
I'll
carnal.
try that.
yeah.
gotta practice it.
Carnal. Oh, you got it.
That shit.
But
All I can
Claude,
do is this.
What's
Claude,
up?
I don't know if you come across this in the tri-state area, but like I noticed that brown women they get easily impressed if a white or a black dude can spit a couple of sentences in Spanish and they'll date him. Whereas where it's a brown dude trying to impress a brown woman, he has to go the extra mile to impress her. I don't know if you come across in the tri-state area or basically impress her family, because I've had a couple of issues in the past where like I did a couple of brown women, then I meet the family, they expect me to have like a six-figure income, be a super professional, and just carry myself a certain way. And then I'm just here thinking, well, like you wouldn't be asking me all these questions, or you wouldn't be treating me this way if I was a white man. So, I mean, why is this like this huge standard for us brown dudes? And I don't know if you've felt this before, but I've experienced this a lot in our communities,
Mhm.
especially in the Southern Native communities, like where brown men are expected to be these superheroes and go the extra mile to get with our women, whereas you see an average white dude, like he doesn't need to have a six-figure income, doesn't need to be a professional. He can still get with one of the hottest and most attractive brown women in our community. And this also happens in the black community, but I've also seen this being more prevalent in our, maybe because I'm experiencing it through my own eyes. But I mean, but you tell me if you've seen this also.
So I haven't really experienced it, but I feel like I have heard of that type of shit happening. And I feel like what that is
Yeah,
just a result of like the whole Hispanista culture. So the way they see like
yeah,
if you're gonna bring home a brown person, they better be worth it type shit. Like
yeah,
that's just my like kind of my theory. That I'm not saying that's definitely what it is, because like I said, I've never personally experienced it. You know, I dated in my lifetime. I dated a girl who was black and white, but that was a high school bullshit relationship. Um, and I dated this native woman, but her parents hated her, so her parents also hated me and any other
oh,
boyfriend
okay,
that she had. So I mean, there was that.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, I've never personally experienced that, but yeah, no, I think that's really just what it is. Like, you bring home a white person, it's like, oh, hallelujah, you're praising the bloodline. But you bring home a brown person, it's like, fuck. Well, it better be worth it. Where's the money at?
Yeah, basically.
I
Maybe that's
mean,
just no. Yeah, you can go, Crispin. Oh, I was
well,
just
no,
gonna.
I was just gonna say I know one thing about my own people as far as the tri-state area. I know, and Ramo was talking about this. Most people get on the subways out there, but if you're Mohawk and you're an iron worker, you probably have a car because people are commuting from Canada and across the bridge. So I'm just saying, if you, I've gotten some Six Nations dude interested in Southern women before, so hopefully we'll
Yeah,
start to see an upkeep of that.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna say that make like the hoops that brown, native people are expected to jump through. Like you said, Claude and Ramo. Like maybe it's just like something that's kind of ingrained in the Latin culture. That
Absolutely.
we all know that the way like Latin culture is been taught in terms of like the how people of native descent are looked at, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and what is this saying? Like, don't be an Indio, like things like that. Like, you don't think that that
Yeah.
doesn't have like the you know the ramifications of like being racist.
Yeah.
How many other problems that come out of that? So I don't know. I mean, oh yeah, I was going to bring up this video. It was crazy. I wish I could share it, but it's somewhere in another file. It was of this like Guatemalan guy who was like explaining to his dad that like, oh, you know, I'm native, and his dad was just like, no, like you're not one of those people in the mountains. And then he was talking about like, well, we don't really speak Spanish. We speak, you know, we're meant to speak what is the Mayan language? The main one is like sort of like
Keisha
K
Maya, I
or
think. Keisha. I think it's Keisha Maya.
yeah, yeah, that's right, that one. And like the dad was like saying, no, that's a mountain language. It's an Asian language. We don't talk like that. Like, wow, like is that really the type of Latin culture that's what's the word permeated? Not permeated, but just like that it's
Yeah.
been so absorbed by us and like that we just like kind of hate anything that's like native related. It's sad, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's problems and consequences that come from that, and it's you start to like hate yourself, you hate anyone that looks remotely like native, and you don't get any progress from that. There's no like advancement of working with others because it's just kind of inherent for you to just have this sort of like distaste, um, and that goes into the dating scene, that goes in like working with people and all
Yeah.
those things. um, So there's definitely like issues in Latin culture that need to be addressed.
Very
Um,
much.
Right.
but you're
Even
gonna
my
say something?
own mother has like tried to fight her roots ever since I've tried to reclaim it, and it's like it's you know she's little by little coming to terms with it, but it's been kind of hard to convince her because just that's how brainwashed she's been that she doesn't even want to claim to be native, and it's like, but you are, you
Yeah.
literally look it. You know, she acknowledges white people who say they're Cherokee, and I'm like, no, you do not realize how detrimental that is to our culture. Then she's like, no, you're being disrespectful to them. I'm like, no, I'm not. They're actually being disrespectful to you, and you're allowing it, and you're getting mad at me for pointing that out. Like, you know, and then it's definitely a result of the Latin culture and what was put into her mind, you know. And you can't blame her when you see her grandmother praising her, you know, her daughter-in-law over her own son just because her daughter-in-law is white passing, even though they're both native. Just because my grandmother happens to be white passing, she gets praised more by
Yeah.
the white grandmother. Why do you think that is? And you got to imagine growing up witnessing that. Of course, it's going to be hard to want to accept that pride, but you know, it's a process. We got to work
Yeah.
to unlearn everything that was forced on us by the Spanish colonizers, because otherwise then we are going to fucking breed ourselves out of existence, and any little remnants of our culture is going to forever be attributed to the Spanish.
Yeah, and this is why I kind of like well, I praise like natives like coming together, regardless of if we're from like Argentina or Guatemala or from the north. It's important to come together and
Yeah.
form some strong type of unity that embraces our roots, but not just our roots, but the culture and the language, and what we can do to advance that, and what we can do to support
Yeah.
others, what we can do to like praise like the features that we have, whether that's skin, hair, or nose. um, because again, like we all just said, what has like this part of Latin culture been doing for centuries since its existence is essentially spitting on the native man or woman.
Kill the
We see,
Indian, save the man.
yeah, what can I cite other than the video would be what happened with Yalitza. She got tons of crap for coming up from the ranks to where she's gotten today.
Yeah.
Like, come on. There has to be change. And I think what's happened with these, social online like movements and whatnot, it's a good thing. I don't see why people would be against it. I don't see why people would be against, as I said before, like praising like native features and whatnot. There's no problem with it, in my opinion. Um, but again, like the important thing is coming together, um, finding some sort of like goal, like what really like unifies us, what good we can do um, for the people and in the world here. So, more plans are on the way. It's already been an hour 20. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And you want to
So,
know something about praising native features? I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all because I mean we see black people doing it all the fucking time,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
don't get nobody says anything about that. I mean I see black people praising their hair and their noses and their lips and all of that all the time. You know their hips, their skin, everything. Why can't we do the same for our people?
yeah, I agree. I think I even saw like a title of a movie. I forgot what it was called, but it said like Black something. But I was just like, okay, so those like movies can like pass. And like you said, all the things that you just said, Claude, that people are like okay with. But one mention of like native nose or like feature. And then it's automatically like, oh no, that's racist. It's about culture only, yada, 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 yada.
yeah.
So it's just like, no, I don't think you get it. So, um, but people are waking up, regardless of people that are going to disagree.
Right.
You always have people on that road. So, but well, we had like one other topic,
We
which
might have
maybe we
time.
can. Hmm?
We might have time.
We might have time. Well, I'm debating now because I know we talked about like politics. Well, not politics, but like um, different like ideologies. But I think I wanted to address like one thing before, which we probably won't get to. Uh, was like the recent video I made in the end regarding like Lance, right? Modern Warrior, and his video about like saying we need to have this conversation that African people, Black people could be here like with Indigenous people. Like I don't know who he is to say these crazy things, but doesn't he notice that? Not notice? Doesn't he not know that that like contributes to like native erasure, and that like opens up a
Yeah,
rabbit hole of distribution of resources that shouldn't be that will a possible distribution of resources to people that don't deserve them because
yeah,
they're not like the original people. I don't because I'm saying this because he has like 1 million followers or 2 million followers. So that's a lot of people that could fall for his like stupid rhetoric. Um, and
yeah,
he deserves to be called out over it. Honestly, I should just make a separate video for him. But
Hell yeah.
yeah, really,
yeah,
because it's dangerous. I don't think people like understand that. I mean, I see his followers on there too. Um, they're like, "Oh, you're doing, this needs to be talked about." Or no, you're such a good person for doing this, and they're like, "Oh, like
yeah.
I don't know." And he's from a native community. Like,
He's
what do
pandering.
your
You know what
people
it is?
say?
You want to know what he's doing right now?
He's just pandering.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say I don't even know if I want to say it, but you know what? Yeah, he's pandering because I feel like right
Yeah,
now we're entering into a climate where black supremacy is becoming a thing, and the thing
yeah,
is that you can't say that, otherwise you're a racist. And that's why I even debated right now whether or not I should say this. But you know what? I'm gonna just since you went ahead and did it, I'm gonna go ahead and say it because it's like no, black supremacy is very well becoming a thing, and it's like
yeah,
you can't say anything about like it. It's gotten to a point where it's like you even mention the word black and people bug out on you, and it's like it's getting way too out of control. And so I think that's exactly what it is. He's fucking pandering, but it's like, dude, I'm open. I've said before that I'm open to the idea that possibly maybe some Africans found their way to the Americas, but to say that that the African Americans of today are the Native Americans is just pick up a fucking history book. Oh, but
yeah,
those are whitewashed. All right, well, fucking, there's mad other history that you can look at. How about just look at our
yeah,
artifacts? Look at the fact that the Mayans painted themselves as red and not black.
yeah,
I mean, just look at the pictures and all that. I mean, people try to come up with the most ridiculous shit sometimes, and I mean, like, I'm still baffled by the whole Olmec head theory because it's like, are we looking at the same thing? Because I have never once looked at those sculptures and thought those look like Africans. Like, I feel like the Olmecs look like me. You know what I mean? More or less. So I'm like, what the fuck are these people even talking about? Like, where are you? Like, what are you like? What kind of drugs are you smoking that you're seeing Africans? You're seeing
Crystal
people with
meth.
non-European features. You're like, oh, African. We would see it first. Like, no, sorry, but no.
The thing they use, this is what I see these Wabo channels. The first thing they go to is that they say that a conquistador saw black, dark-skinned people, and they immediately associate that with like looking like a black person from Africa. It's just the stupidest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the closer to the equator you go, the darker you're gonna be. And the first encounters were the Tainos, so it's very possible that we had a blackish skin, but our features were still hair like this, and the nose shapes, and I mean, like,
cheekbones and
it's
everything.
very possible. Exactly. So it's very. And I mean, it's like how when you go up north and you get like the Alaskan natives who have white skin but still have those very strong indigenous features. Again, it's like what I was talking about before about climate and the part of the part of the earth that you're in. So, you know, it's very possible that yes, the first natives he encountered, they probably mistook for black people because that's all they knew. But still, the evidence shows that no, the Tainos were not African. They were fucking indigenous Caribbean. They were, so it's like
Yeah.
Are you guys gonna add anything, Ramo? Or
Yeah, I wanted to add something. So I don't know who this modern warrior guy is. I briefly know him from what you guys described him, but he's one out of many native influencers or native people on social media who have this big following. He's not the only one I've seen. There's a couple of others that I know that are always trying to speak out on behalf of all of us, and I think that's wrong because you're only speaking on behalf of your experiences and not your tribe experience or someone else's tribe experience. We have to understand that there were other nations who have different experiences with other races. It wasn't just the white men; it was the black men who also massacred them. It was the black men who also oppressed them. It doesn't even have to be modern times. Even during colonial times, and even during the Indian Wars, the we don't have to go that far. Like, let's take into consideration the Buffalo Soldiers, who were helping the white men expand out in the plains, or even in colonial times. Let's go a little bit further back in the very beginning of New York, when they were first colonizing southern Manhattan. There were parties of black and white men, free black men and white men. They would go upwards to the northern part of Manhattan to hunt the natives so they can expand the colony. And this notion that every black person was a slave that came over here in the Americas is not true. Yeah, like 90% of them were slaves, but there were also that small 10% who were free men or free women, and they would join the white colonists and parties to raid and pillage and massacre natives. And this is something that's not really talked about in history books.
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, with critical race theory, they're always talking about, oh, we're going to talk about, you know, the real history that happened. And it's like, okay, are you going to talk about the Buffalo Soldiers doing what they did, or are you just going to always make it about Whitey? I mean, I understand that white supremacy needs to be called out, most definitely, but it's like with this modern warrior guy, he's supposedly he claims he was misquoted when he was saying that natives mixed with white are not native, or white passing natives are not native. I don't know what he said. I don't really go on TikTok. I think most of that shit on there is just too ignorant for me. But the thing is, I could have an open mind and say that, yeah, what Claude suggested could happen. Do I think it did? No. But even if it did, it wouldn't, like he said, make you native to the United States or any other part of Turtle Island or South America for that matter. Because I think it's kind of criminal that he's even doing that, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I've had other native people from different tribes try and run that same line on me, like, oh, my people have history of there being black visitors. Like, I've had Cree people try and tell me that, and they always try to say their elders say that, and it's like, well, I'm not talking to the elder, and I don't know if that's substantiated. And even if it is, let's be honest, oral tradition is not always accurate. You know, my people don't have any such story of them being here before 1492, and we were pretty well traveled. So it's just a matter of who had the capability to get here and who didn't. So far, we've seen evidence that Polynesians and Vikings did, and it's always this obsession with the white and black binary. They'll be like, "Oh, well, you think the white man can get here, but not the black man?" And it's like, it's not about that. It's just that natives and people from Africa and Australia did not have much seafaring vehicles. So they did in the Pacific and they did in Europe and Asia. That's just a historical fact. It's got nothing to do with what I think which settler came and which one didn't. Okay, here's the only way I think there could be black visitors. This is the only way. If any of the Vikings had blacks that they adopted into their culture that showed up in Greenland and parts of Nova Scotia, if they had any blacks with them, yes, but that's the only way I think it could happen.
Yeah.
Because they didn't come with the Polynesians, and you know, that's basically my point.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that they did or they didn't. All I'm saying is that if they did, that don't mean shit.
Well, according
I could go to fucking China tomorrow. Does that make me Chinese?
Yes.
Well, according to the Wobbles, apparently.
yeah, Wabos. Well, I guess the Polynesians were Wabos, or according to their channels.
Oh God! One of them said to my sister, I just have to say this really quick before I forget. One of them said to my sister, "Ask the Hawaiians. They know we're black." It's like, what the fuck does indigenous Hawaiians have to do with natives on the mainland? Like, we're two different people. I don't know. They try to drag Polynesians into their bullshit.
Crazy times we're living in.
Yeah, super.
Yeah. But guys, it has been an hour and a half, and we talked about a lot. We didn't even cover the other side of the script. So we'll definitely have to have another video for next time. Sorry.
We gotta do part 2.
Yeah, but part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And don't worry, to any of you snowflakes that want to call us anti-black, don't worry. We're going to be taking on white supremacists. We're going to be talking about a white supremacist guy that tried to invade Dominica the next time.
Hey man, I'm not racist. I have a black friend.
That line. I think we made some good points tonight. So
yeah.
I think we'll be good. But yeah, guys, we can talk a little bit, like a minute or two after the video, but I'll just tell the guest on here. Thank you guys for watching. Again, thank you for the cool dudes that were on here. So we'll go ahead and stop this recording, and y'all have a good rest of the night or day, morning.
All right.